I'm working on this 1961 wheel horse, model 401. In the last video, I got the engine installed and got the throttle and choke cables adjusted. Last time I had to work on the throttle cable, and I cut the jacket off of there and saw the rust and crud in it. So I decided I need to make sure the choke cable didn't look like that also. I cut the outside jacket off the choke cable, and you can see it was in the same condition. So it has to go through the same process. I soaked it in kerosene for a bit, and I wire brushed the outside, and I soaked it in WD-40 for a while. So it's in a lot better shape now. 10 years from now it should be in about the same condition, instead of being totally rusted up like it would have been if I'd have left it. Here's the drive belt that was on there. It's getting thin and has some cracks, so I'm going to use a new one. And now I need to clean the belt guard. First I'm going to scrape the chunks out. There's only one spot on here that needs degreased, so I'll just spray some carb cleaner on it. Now I have a little wire brush so I can clean out that pocket there. I'm going to straighten out that dent. That might be there because they only had one spacer. I'm going to use this chunk of aluminum for an anvil because it'll fit in there where that dent is. This is the two bolts that came out of there. They're both coarse thread bolts, the same length, but this one is deformed. The threads are damaged on the end because the bolt holes in this engine are fine thread, and somebody screwed that coarse thread bolt in there and damaged it. So these 4 bolt holes on this Kohler engine block are fine thread, and this bolt hole back on the transmission is a coarse thread. You need 2 bolts that are the same length, but one's a fine thread and one's a coarse thread. I didn't like either of the old bolts, so I have 2 different ones here. Okay, the camera died there. And what you missed is I ran a fine thread tap in this engine hole. Now the proper bolt goes in there, but the first few threads are loose. Hopefully it won't strip out when I tighten the bolt. I'm going to use these special washers on here. The outside's small enough to fit into this pocket, and it should keep from deforming this hole over time. So why is that pocket there? It's because this surface on the Kohler engine block where the front bolt goes is about a 1/4 inch back from this transmission surface that holds the rear bolt. That way you can use one length of spacer in both places. Since there's only one spacer and I need two, I had to make one. Here's what that looks like. This belt would probably still work for a while, but it's getting thin and has some cracks, so I'm going to use a new one. Here's one I got from the local parts store. It's a size A27. That's the same as a 1/2 inch by 29 inch. That seems excessively tight. The clutch pedal won't go down anymore because of the brake linkage. So I'm going to loosen up the brake adjustment to let the pulley go down. That seems pretty tight on there, but I'm pretty sure it's the right size. The pulley's just hanging there because the clutch spring's not installed yet. Under the starter housing, there's a tab on the frame with a hole in it. That's where the clutch spring connects. I need to move the linkage so I can connect the spring. And right now the belt's preventing that. So I have to pull the belt around this pulley here. There's not a hole for this end of the spring. It connects to the cotter pin. That's the way Wheel Horse did it. That belt's pretty tight. If you squeeze it and move it forward, it does release from the pulley, so it might be able to work. This arm has to be adjusted so it almost touches the belt when the belt's engaged. Now when you push in the clutch and rotate the pulley, that arm should help release the belt from the pulley. That's not working too well. The belt guard's part of it, because if it were installed it would hold the bottom of the belt flat. Maybe I can simulate that with this piece of metal. Okay, I have a bungee cord holding the clutch pedal down now. I'm going to try to make the belt release from the pulley. That ain't working too well. I'm going to make sure that arm's as close to the belt as I can get it without touching. Okay, that's starting to work now. I'm going to continue on with this new belt. That's not going to work. The belt's rubbing on this spacer. And when you push in the clutch, it gets even worse. That belt seems a little wide. I'm going to try a different belt. This is a different brand. It says 1/2 inch by 29 inch on it. And in smaller letters it says A27, the same as the other one. The K just means it's made with Kevlar in it. It's supposed to be the same size, but it looks thinner. Well, that looks like it's up higher. And it clears this spacer now. Now I'm going to set this thing down where it almost touches the belt, but I still want to see some daylight there. Okay, that looks like it should work. I'm going to put this cover on next. Well, that's not working. The bolt's a 1/4 inch off location. Well, you can see from the paint marks there that the engine was back farther at one time. So I've been struggling with that tight belt, and all I had to do is move the engine back. So that's how much movement I have. I'll move it back as far as I can. Make sure the exhaust pipe is against the frame when you tighten the bolts. This lock washer is broken, so I'll replace it with a good used one. I want to see if this will bolt up before I continue. The pulley's lined up with the big hole nicely. I can't get the bolt in because that movable pulley's in the way. It looks like everything would line up. I'm going to keep going. I want to go back to the first belt I tried because I think the engine moved far enough to let it work. That looks more normal. This spacer looks like it'll fit. Well, if I used the one with the coarse thread bolt, it would work. When I hold this clutch pulley so it's disengaged, I should get some clearance around that front pulley. That should work. Set this finger so it's close to the belt but not touching. I'm going to use a bungee cord to hold the clutch pedal down. And that belt releases now with just that top hold down on there. When the belt guard's on there, it should work even better. Okay, this should work now. I'm going to put the belt guard on. That all feels good. I'm going to turn it and make sure nothing's rubbing. Looking at the back side of the belt guard, everything looks normal. With the clutch engaged, the belt turns with the engine. I'll move it a little bit farther so you can see the letters on the belt. Now I have a bungee cord holding the clutch pedal down. That looks good. The belt's not moving in the direction I'm rotating the engine. It's actually moving when the engine kicks back the other way after I release the starter. With the clutch engaged, the belt moves with the rotation of the engine. Now that everything looks like it should work, I'm going to spray the stuff down. Well, that's as far as I'm going this time, and here's what it looks like. Next time I'll get the belt guard back on. After that, the brake linkage needs adjusted because I backed it off when I installed the belt. And after I show some additional information about those tulip mufflers, I'll decide which muffler I'm going to use. Oh yeah, and right after that, I'll try to start it and see if it works. Alright, that's it.